You're listening to the Brown Perspective. This is one of your hosts, R.O. No soy yo. R.O. is my co-host, and this is Eduardo. Se me
Yeah,
olvidó el nombre mío.
yeah, it's all right. We can switch for a day. See how that goes.
Man, a day in the life of R.O. That would be interesting.
Right?
The
Yeah,
man who never loses his grip on reality.
yeah. I think after a day, you'd welcome going back.
That's funny. But I
So
guess part of the reason that I'm confused is because we're going to be talking about the Colombian presidential election results, which happened earlier this week. And as a proud Colombian, I have to say that has been interesting to see this as the most of the headlines have captured this shift to the left for Colombia. But I
yeah,
think what I want our listeners to understand is that in some ways Colombia has been plagued by this violence between liberals and conservatives.
hmm,
And as a matter of fact, one of the schools I went to while I was in Colombia was called Jorge Eliezer Gaitan, and he was a prominent liberal leader in the 1940s that was assassinated, and that started el Bogotazo. There were these riots in Bogota, and then this period of la violencia, which was basically the liberals and the conservatives going at each other. And actually, a lot of the violence was driven by the conservatives and the
well,
church.
and it was also just last year that we did two episodes on the instability in Colombia. Remember?
Yes, I mean, there has been a lot of political instability, a lot of unrest, and in some ways, the election of Gustavo Petro and Francia Márquez, who is the first afro-descendant, first Afro woman to be vice president
Mm-hmm.
of the country, is an indication of the type of change. And that was his message all along. It was interesting because in his campaign was about change, and when he in his victory speech he talked about the need for esperanza, so hope and change. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah, right. He took a playbook from Obama. Let's hope that the he only took the page on how to get elected and not how to run once you've been elected.
Yeah, I
So
mean that's going to be the challenge for them, both because they're going to face some incredible resistance
yeah,
and opposition, and also because it's difficult, right? It's difficult to try to undo or proactively institute some changes
yeah, and you still have
in a
the
very complicated society.
yeah you have entrenched powers. You have the existing political opposition that still has control. So and he's only a president, so he can only try to do so much. Let's hope that it's something positive that helps the people. But I wanted to ask you, was there a direct link between the protests from last year to his election? Did it help him in any way? Was he in any way related to them? Like, how did we go from that to this president in terms of the relationship between them?
Yeah, no, definitely, because he ran in the previous presidential election and he actually came in second place. And under Colombian law, the second place gets a seat in the Senate, so there can be an opposition
Hmm.
to the ruling government. But yeah, but I think I mean, he was very strategic about how he supported all of the the unrest that was happening before the pandemic and then after the pandemic. And I certainly think that the poor the poor government response to the pandemic and the economic suffering and the actual suffering, the inequality, a lot of those things did sort of clear the path for him to be elected. And I also think that there were a lot of more young people who were really engaged politically, paying attention, marching in the streets, and as they proved in the election, actually went out and voted.
Do you think that he's going to be able to, or that first of all, that he's going to take an interest in pushing back against the neoliberal establishment that has such a stronghold in Colombia? It's basically a lot of U.S. influence in that region. In that country. For example, I know this would be a drastic measure, but telling the U.S., hey, military bases here, not welcome anymore. Would it be that extreme, or would you think it's going to be a bit more tamed?
I think it's going to be a little more tamed because I know that right now we're waiting for him to appoint his cabinet. So I think that he's certainly going to have to try to build as much of a consensus, both to help him get things done and to help build a majority in the legislature to get things done and things passed. I think that it does seem. I mean, just this week he met with Maduro. Well, he met with the president. He talked to Maduro, the president of Venezuela. So I think he's interested in normalizing relationships and trade with Venezuela. So obviously that goes against what American foreign policy now dictates. So I think in some ways he understands that he needs to work with the U.S. I think that a lot of the Colombian society is grateful to the U.S. for a lot of the support that they have given to the country. Unfortunately, a lot of that support has been in the form of military assistance that I think created a number of issues in the society. So maybe he'll be able to renegotiate and sort of propose some new ways of having a good relationship with the United States while also having a good relationship with Venezuela and some of the other neighbors. I mean, he already talked about how in order to solve the regions or the continent's problems that you need to have everybody at the table. So I think he's pushing actually for the integration of the of the region to become more economically, politically integrated, so that way they confront a lot of the issues that are facing those countries, like the economy, climate change,
Hmm.
etc.
Yeah, and it's good that he's open to dialogue with Venezuela because you need to be able to have good relations with your neighbors. You need to be able to have trade with them. It shouldn't be that you have the hand of Washington guiding policy, especially in South America. So the president should be able to speak to the president of Cuba, to the Venezuela, and then now with these other leftist governments in Latin America, and also with the recent summit of the Americas with Mexico refusing to attend, or the president refusing to attend as a sign of solidarity with Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. So I think it's good to form a bloc that collectively can flex some muscle and be able to resist a lot of the US. It's no longer like outright direct intervention and coups. It's a lot more covert, but it's good that Latin American countries can, if they start uniting this way. I still think that you'll know when the pendulum is swinging, at least more drastically, when you start seeing a country like China investing a lot more in a country like Mexico, which is right the United States' backyard. That's something that I don't think they allow, as much as Mexico maybe wants to pretend like they have a foreign, not a foreign, a sovereignty in the nation to do what they want. the I don't think the U.S. would take it very well if all of a sudden Mexico strikes up all these contracts with China to build high-speed rail, to build bridges and dams, and to have more trade with China. I think there would definitely be pushback. So we'll see if that actually, because you want, like, Latin America is in desperate need of infrastructure projects, and that's the one thing that China is pretty good at, developing infrastructure. Obviously, they in return you trade your natural resources or you pay them in other ways, but at least that's a good deal because you get infrastructure out of it. I'm not sure if you've heard the news about, or if you followed the news as to like some of the infrastructure projects that they have in Africa.
The
So
new Silk Road.
yeah, I know there's a lot of criticism of that. It's saying that the Chinese are just practicing a new type of colonialism where they go in there and they give them these loans that they can't pay, and then they take over like the ports. I think it was the port of, I think it was Sri Lanka that China took over when they couldn't pay. But it it it's a I think it's exaggerated. Obviously, I don't want to get into that, but again, I think definitely the country right now that is able to build these massive infrastructure projects is China. So I think the only reason why you don't see a lot more investment, especially you see more in South America, but not as much like in Mexico, is because of still the U.S. influence.
For sure. And I know that that's one of the fears of the United States administration. I know they have their hands full as well. And actually, just this week, they announced they're trying to, because they don't have the financial means right now, the government doesn't, or
Mm-hmm.
actually their preferred method is to try to leverage the private sector to do some of those investments that you said are needed. And it's true. I think that the type of investments that are needed are very necessary. And I know that someone like Petro is also more interested in helping the country, Colombia, develop an economy based on the economy of the 21st century, right? Around knowledge, around services, and not necessarily dependent on the extraction of fossil fuels or other metals or minerals, which I know there's a lot of interest in Colombia because there's some minerals there that are used in the manufacturing of cell phones and a bunch
Mm-hmm.
of other things. So I know that that's something that is playing out currently in the country, as it so many other parts of the world.
Yeah, but I think when it comes to extracting the natural resources, though, I think you do want to give yourself the option to tap into those industries to help your countries. As long as you're using the money wisely, the profits from that, and you're helping the country, then that's something that I'm not sure I would be opposed to. Just because something like oil and if it's rare earth minerals, the ones that you're talking about,
Hmm.
you don't necessarily, like, if you want to do a transition to a different type of economy, I think you need a good foundation for that, right? Countries like developing countries like Colombia and countries in Africa, if they have natural resources, I think that it's better that they get used for a good cause instead of being exploited, right? And being extracted by other countries, like other more powerful countries. Let the Colombians enjoy their natural resources until they get to a point of stability where they can then transition their economy.
But the thing I mean, the reality is that at least I don't think the Colombian government at this point has the resources to be able to do the type of extraction that would need to be done. And unfortunately, there's a lot of illegal extraction
Hmm.
of gold, and actually a lot of the afro-descendants and Chocó and other parts of the indigenous communities where a lot of these minerals are at. They're impacted by the illegal mining, which contaminates their water,
Yeah.
impacts their health. I mean, it's happening in Colombia, it's happening in Brazil and the Amazons. Obviously, there the political dynamic is a little different. They're actually being encouraged by by Bolsonaro, and actually Bolsonaro has the attitude, right? Like the Amazon is not yours, it's
Mm-hmm.
Brazil's. You cannot tell us what to do. And
Yeah.
this thing that the Amazon is the lungs of the world, that's BS. We're gonna use this resource for us
Yeah.
to build our wealth and our prosperity.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I could see both sides of the argument with that one. It's like the first world privileged liberals telling Africans that they can't hunt specific tigers because they're endangered. They're like, well, screw you. We need to survive. We need to live. They live in our land. We're gonna kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They look at developed countries and say, you guys exploited for centuries. You reap the benefits of it, and now you tell us that we can't extract natural resources from our land. So, but anyhow, I also heard that he's a Bitcoin supporter. I
Oh
don't.
no. Oh no, no, no.
I,
I hope he doesn't take the Bukele route.
Bukele is down like 50 million at this point.
So, yeah. Well, now Bukele, the Salvadorian people are down 50 million.
Yeah, but I think that's an unfair characterization of it.
Ah.
Yeah. No, no, it is because you have to consider, the tourism is up, their GDP is up. Essentially, and this isn't me, this is from some of the podcasters that I listen to, but essentially, El Salvador, within a period of 2 years, were able to do a rebranding of the country. Just think about how much money that would cost to rebrand the whole country. Because now, when people talk about El Salvador, they're no longer talking about the gang problem. At least not in the
Which they still have. And
well.
it's been pretty bad recently. There's been a lot of, I think there were like 80 people that were innocent people that were killed because the agreement between the Maras and the government broke down.
But he's been cracking down on them, right? So when did this happen?
Oh, this happened. I must have been at least almost a month ago or
Well,
so.
is that what triggered the major crackdown then? Because he did a huge crackdown on gang members.
Yeah, I
I
mean, part of it was to sort of show this power, and I know there's videos of him, showing and basically humiliating them.
Yeah, that's what I
But
saw.
what he hasn't acknowledged yet, and there's some tapes out now that where members of his government were negotiating, and he denies it, but they were negotiating with the Maras. Unfortunately, one or two of their leaders got arrested, and because of that, there was a reaction, and they killed like 80 people in the span of a few days.
Yeah, that's probably what triggered the crackdown. And I had heard before that he was negotiating with the gang members to try to reduce crime in the past. I wouldn't be surprised, especially if the gangs, because the gangs have so much power and they extort most of the local businesses there. So if he did crack down on them, and he also got criticized for the way that he cracked down, because apparently there were like even kids under 18 that were arrested. So yeah, but how do you fix
Well,
this? Go ahead.
well, the problem is not that. Yes, I mean, if you need to be able to negotiate and try to get to an agreement, the problem is that he denied it. He didn't want to admit that he was secretly negotiating
Mm-hmm.
with the gangs.
Yeah, because
So
it's
if
bad.
you're
It's
gonna
bad.
be negotiating with the gangs, be upfront about it, make it public.
Well, no,
Let
because he would get eaten alive by his opposition if he.
What opposition? He's already taken them out. He's already controlling most of the government.
I think there's always opposition, and I can see why he would deny it
You
too.
mean the press?
Yeah, I mean,
The
I'm not
press is trying to fight censorship.
I'm not defending the decision to. I'm just telling you that in his situation, I
Sad,
think.
Real, sad, very sad.
Wait, what's that? That what he did?
Yes.
Well, I don't. So I'm not defending the decision. I'm telling you that I understand why. Because I'm not the type of person. Because there's a lot of people that would say no, he doesn't negotiate with gang members, but we don't negotiate with terrorists. But come on, they're so strong that of course you're gonna have to negotiate with them.
Of course.
He's trying to do it behind. He's trying to do it. He's trying to get people like maybe 2 degrees away from him to do the negotiation, so that if they get caught, then he has plausible deniability. So he'll deny it for now, and if there's more evidence comes out, then he'll just say, well, they acted on their own, it wasn't my. So that would be the next thing that he does. But look, he's not a perfect guy. He's going to make a lot of mistakes. What's the alternative? Because overall, if you look at him in terms of like trying to help the Salvadoran people, I mean, come on, are you honestly telling me that he's worse than what El Salvador has had before him, right? So let me bring it back to Gustavo Petro, because he is a leftist government and he's going to also get a lot of criticism. So everything that he does is going to be put under a magnifying glass. Mm-hmm. And I think all of his critics are going to pretend like what he's doing is like 10 times worse, or they won't even pretend like it's worse than before. They won't even mention what was before. They'll just pretend like he's like the worst thing that's ever happened to Colombia. And I just think that's just part of the beast of politics. And I mean, he has to be prepared for it as well, because I'm sure it's going to come his way. Every little mistake that he makes, whenever he tries to really bring about change for the common people, for the indigenous people, for the afro-descendants, you don't think that the entrenched corporate power in there is going to just go on a smear campaign if they stand to lose profits in any way from his policies? Of course, they're going to crucify him in the public stage.
Yeah, I mean, they are, and they did. They tried to smear him during the campaign. One of the reasons why his opponent was in some ways considered, they called him the Trump of Colombia. But what happened is he won, and I think tying it back to the conversation we were just having about the Maras, in Colombia, there was a peace agreement that was negotiated. Unfortunately, the previous administration, the Duque administration, was lukewarm to it, in part because he represented those entrenched interests. Mm-hmm. And now I think with this administration, with the Petro administration, and he said it, that you cannot have a lot of these things without peace. So making a commitment to implement the peace accords, the 2016 peace accords, to be able to provide the type of supports that the folks who demobilized happen. And the other thing that we haven't talked about is like Gustavo Petro. He was in one of the guerrilla, one of the guerrilla groups back in the day, back in the 70s, that was formed because of complaints about the conservatives stealing the election, El M19. He was arrested, he went to jail, then he went to school, and he's now about to become on August 7th the president of Colombia. So now he has this opportunity. But my point being is for Colombian society, for Salvadorian society, to be able to reconcile, to negotiate peace and move forward, the type of negotiations need to be public. They need to be supported or at least communicated to the population, so that there's at least some transparency and a way to try to move forward as a traumatized nation, which is, I mean, Colombia has been traumatized, Colombians as a society. And yes, we're very happy. And I think some of the ways why we're so happy, we love music and all these things, is because of some of the violence that we have seen and experienced either ourselves or our families and others. And again, if you haven't watched Encanto, watch it. It kind of gets into a little bit into that, but so the importance of him, hopefully he does have the opportunity to implement the agenda that he's proposing.
Yeah, and I wish it could work like that. I wish that things really could be transparent, as you say, put it out to the public for a vote to get their opinion, put polls. But on day one, when this guy gets into office, he's going to be making a whole bunch of backroom deals, because that's just the nature of politics. He's going to be making deals with the corporate interest, with other governments, and some of the stuff will be stuff that the public is not going to know about, because if they found out, they'd be upset, because that's just the way that he has to govern. It's millions of people. You're not going to be able to please everyone. Like, you just think about how messy it is if he wants to implement some type of reforms that help the poor or to help the Afro communities or the indigenous communities. Well, and he has to raise money, right? So whose taxes are going to go up? Who's going to pay for it? He has to inconvenience a part of society to try to help the other. And if you're trying to inconvenience the established power, then they're either going to come after you and try to smear you because they don't like what you're doing, and if they're powerful enough, they could mount an actual a challenge against you, or you could strike some backroom deals with them to maybe give some concessions, give them some nice government contracts, give them some rights to some of those nice mineral, some of those natural resources. Dude, it's all backroom deals, man. And the question is, who's going to get the scoop on what this guy is doing so they can then try to expose him? So that's just, I know I sound like a cynic, but that's just how governments work. So this guy, be careful who you choose. I always say this, be careful who you choose as your heroes. Let's just hope that the net result of his presidency is better than the previous guy. That's really all that's what I would wish that comes out of this presidency, because he's going to do some stuff that we're not going to agree with, that you're not going to agree with. But just look at the net result, and hopefully that's better than the previous administrations, and is pushing Colombia in the positive direction.
Yes, I'm done with that.
All right, let's wrap this up. Anything else before this? Before we wrap it up?
No, I think we had a good conversation. To your point, we'll see how things evolve. I know that part of it, yes, is the conservative pushback, but then similar to what happens in other places, including the U.S., it will be the factions within his coalition, which coalition is going to want this, want more, be good with this, not be good with that. So we'll see, to your point, if what kind of delicious Colombian sausage can be developed in those back rooms that hopefully lead us to a delicious bandeja paisa con su choricito, con su chicharrón, con sus frijolitos, arroz, huevito, aguacate y ensalada.
I'm going to go find a Colombian restaurant tomorrow.
Let's do it.
All right. For all of you out there, if you enjoy our content, make sure to check us out. We are Brown Perspective. Nos vemos.
Ciao.